Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to Midweek Takeaway. I'm Phil Carroll, and today we're in the company of Shaun, MD of Greatland Gold. Welcome back, Shaun. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me back again on the program.
Yeah, no problem. So we just heard news that Greatland has been awarded a drilling grant for the Ernest Giles exploration project under the Western Australian Government's Exploration Incentive Scheme to fund exploration, drilling and mobilisation costs. It's a bit of a Brucey bonus, as they say.
Yeah, look, it's. I think we've talked a long time around this being one of our prize exploration targets. We still just need to close out the access agreement with the First Nations, which we've talked about doing that hopefully this year. But we certainly plan to be drilling that next year, and having the West Australian Government provide a grant as part of that access effectively means they're co-funding that first year program. And it is a new area, underexplored, looking through cover. It's the kind of things that the WA grant is designed to promote because it is such a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, so Havron aside, this podcast is going to concentrate on all the other assets that Greatland hold. So give us your summary of Havron just the last month, which has been tumultuous to say the least in terms of what has occurred. And then let's move on. Let's look at the other assets within the portfolio that Greatland has, and obviously the grant today, which all helps in terms of, and also shows that the Australian government really wants to progress this because it's obviously beneficial for its economy.
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good program by the WA and West Australian government. So look, in a nutshell, Havron continues to progress. I think there's an exploration update out next week, which will give a good update on the drilling and the progress at the decline. So I think that will be another positive step forward. And of course the funding package, which is coming up to about 4 weeks ago now in terms of the debt, the equity and the strategic equity with Wailu coming in, I think, together with some additional directors, I think was incredibly positively received, and it should be. It sets us up for success. But I like the format of today to emphasise what else is in the portfolio and why Havron is hopefully the start of many. And with that, what we might do is try to walk through the program or the asset base in maybe 6 or 7 steps. I think it's important to talk about what else is in the Patterson, and then walk through Ernest Giles, Panorama, Bromus, and the Tasmania assets being Fire Tower and Warrantina.
Okay, great. Fire away.
So I think if let's start with the Patterson. And again, I think there's no better place to look for gold and copper than where it's already been found. This is elephant country. You've got Telfer, you've got Rio Tinto's Winu up in the north, and of course Havron nearby Telfer to its east. But I think one of the things I most like is where our Scallywag tenements sit, a long structure which is sitting up to the northwest from Havron. That also leads on to our Jury JV, which we hold with Newcrest, and then further to the north, you see the Patterson Range East. What's probably useful if people are listening to this, if you get up our most recent corporate slide deck, there is an exploration Patterson slide, which gives you a bit of a map of our holdings in the Patterson. And then the following slide is the exploration portfolio, which goes through the other assets, which I'll talk to next. But I think that gives you, a pretty good foundation as to why it's got good proximity to other discoveries. It's a long structure, and we've got a program right now drilling through that Jury and Scallywag area. I think I've described to shareholders before, we did that a little bit differently this year. We started with an RC rig that basically went through that unconsolidated cover cheaper and quicker, opened up those areas, and then we're coming back in with the diamond drill and we're rig, and we're going to kind of drill through those exploration targets and take core out, and it's the core that we cut and then get assayed into that country rock. So That's going on now. And assay times are actually getting a little bit better. I think, at the beginning of this year, people were talking about 10 weeks. I think that's better than halved. So that should see information starting to flow a little bit quicker out of that exploration campaign. Just while we're still in the Patterson, I think Pascal's a really interesting tenement that sits almost kind of between Havron and Telfer. There's a good anomaly there that we want to kind of get on and drill. So that's interesting. And of course, even closer to infrastructure than Havron. So that's lovely. Rudel down to the south. Again, we've kind of worked closest to infrastructure. So Rudel kind of comes in secondary in our program, but again, has some really nice targets on it. And then if we go a little bit further to the south, we get into those Canning. Some of those we bought last year in 2021 together with Pascal. And again, they have some good anomalies, some good convergence of gravity and geo and magnetics. So the geophysics there help us understand why we find them prospective and why we want to drill them, because that's effectively what originally created Havron as this target, which was this confluence of a grav and magnetic anomalies.
So all of those that you just mentioned are gold orientated, or gold and copper?
Gold and copper. And if you kind of look at the history of the Patterson, if you go a little bit further across to the west than Telfer, you have the nifty copper mine. Now that had gold credits, and in fact it used to be an asset at Straits Resources where I was. So that's more copper. Winnow up to the north is more copper. Telfer has been predominantly gold with copper credits though, and Havron also looks to be predominantly gold with some copper and potentially other base metal credits. So I think the way we think about this is you've got prospectivity for both. History tells you that gold is part of it.
And the history behind this, going back obviously a long time, is that this is a fault in the Earth's crust that effectively has created, as you called it, elephant country. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
If I think about the genesis of Havron, and what we're really looking for in this region is, this is a weakness in structure, which has allowed this series of intrusives to kind of force their way up, like this molten magna. And then often what happens is, in a simplistic way, is if that's at the right temperature gradient and it's in a reservoir with sufficient quantities of payable metals, they get pushed up and get trapped as part of this kind of expression, the intrusive expression. So what you see, what we're kind of looking for is other places where this has happened. And I think one of the interesting things about that Eastern Brescia is that looks like it's a different time event to the original Havron series of intrusives. So it does make the whole area look a little bit more appetizing in that you can have these series of episodes where material is forced to the surface. So we're kind of looking for where there is perhaps weaknesses in that Earth's crust, which has allowed that to come up. And we're trying to really identify them initially through the geophysics, then trying to understand the stratigraphy when we drill that, and then try to narrow in exactly where we think is the heart, or try to explain what is the geophysical anomalies we have identified. And that's what we believe is the basis of good exploration, is this confluence of lots of preparation and understanding to try to work out where you want to drill hole, punch in only one or two drill holes, then recalibrate against what you expected it to be, then reinterpret to better define what you think you're looking for, and then try to go back to that anomaly and try to drill it until we think we can explain it. Until we can explain, okay, well, we've found what it is, but it's not, it doesn't have sufficient economic material in it. It's a black shale, so it comes up on a magnetics, but that's not going to be hosting metal. Or we say, okay, well, this is the kind of event we're looking for. It's brecciated. Okay, well, it's not mineralized here. Where else? Where do we think is the the epicenter of this, where else should we be looking? So it's a kind of forensic kind of detective as much as a geology, but that's kind of the profile that we work through as we investigate those opportunities in the Paterson. And I think that approach gives us the best opportunity to create the most value from our exploration program over time in a financially sensible way.
Yeah, it sounds to me like it's almost like you're digging for the roots of a tree. Is that a good analogy in terms of what we're looking
I
for?
think so, particularly in the
as it's pushed out of the earth itself, then the roots of the tree, spread.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad analogy for particularly for the Paterson where you are undercover. And I think one of the things we're trying to understand is this origin of Havron is a 10 kilometer, is a 50 kilometer radius kind of magma kind of area. So what is our search zone around Havron along these routes? So that's all part of us trying to understand what is the where is the genesis of this event, and where can we find other similar events. And understanding the structure through there, the geological structure, allows you to stay on structures that are consistent with where you'd expect in terms of time frame and other episodes as to where you'd expect another Havron or Telfer type event.
So we have other assets still to talk about in Greatland. So do you want to move on to those? I
might just also mention we also have an application up further to the north, kind of up closer to Winnow, which we like as well. So if we get that, we also think that's an area where there's a lot of, clearly with the Rio Tinto drilling, there's a lot of copper and gold in that area. And it's a little bit about, can we find a particularly high grade pot of that? But it's a nice address to have.
Indeed. Okay. So there's lots there basically, and lots of exploration to go on in the next 12 months.
Yeah, and it's a big holding as well. So in terms of square kilometres, it's close to kind of 1,500 square kilometres. So you've got it's a big area to be looking across. So we keep walking through. I think let's go for Ernest Giles next. For a couple of reasons. I think it's topical with today's grant, but also we're really excited about it, and have been for a long time. So look, firstly, this grant, we're really pleased. I think it's a great initiative by the West Australian government, and it helps us accelerate our program in terms of trying to unlock value and a potential development there at Ernest Giles. When we look at this is an Archean greenstone, so Archean age deposit, greenstone belt. And this is where a lot of the gold in Western Australia is associated with these Archean greenstones. If you think about, the Super Pit, the Jundee, a lot of those big deposits have been in this kind of setting. So as we kind of look out here, we're a little bit further to the east. We're undercover. Again, cover is our friends. If these already expressed at surface, they would have been found 50, 100 years ago. So we like cover. It allows us to apply these modern geological techniques to unlock value where they haven't been stumbled across historically. The Archean greenstones in Western Australia are tightly held, and they've all been heavily drilled, like pin cushions. So to have one which hasn't been, and then to have some really excellent geophysics across it, does make us really excited. And this all sits within this kind of Yilgarn Craton, which again is really the majority of West Australian gold. So we like the area. We have some pretty expansive holdings there. We think we've really got picked out the eyes of that system. We've got multiple targets from the geophysics that's been done, and it's really a matter of getting boots on the ground. But we love that area. We want to hold it 100%. We want to do that drilling ourselves and understand exactly what is there. Just to add, it will be a multi-year campaign. To understand, as I say, we'll take this same approach of punching in one or two holes, understanding the stratigraphy, recalibrating, and re-understanding exactly where the heart of these systems are, and then trying to kind of walk into drilling that and explaining what we're seeing.
And that's an interesting concept now because of the ability and the size of the company now, because of Havron, you have the ability to go basically alone to a very large degree on any other finds. Is that fair to say or not?
Yeah, I think Kevin, that's very fair to say. I think we can keep more of the value for Greatland shareholders if we're successful. I think we've got a proven capacity to access capital. We have a more diversified and expanded set of skill sets on our board, and in terms of the executive team as well. We've got a broader cross section of what you need to understand a deposit, and maybe the confidence to tackle a discovery as well. So I think Meadows is our first of many. But if we were successful at one of these anomalies, I think you're exactly right. We would want to hold it and capture that value for our own shareholders.
Yeah, which is very exciting, and the upside could be potentially vast in that situation, especially if Havron continues to grow and produces free cash flow for you guys to do more things with other things. But
yeah, correct. Being able to re-leverage that cash flow into other developments and kind of multiply your cash flow generators is a perfect way to do it. And I think across these systems, we talk about Meadows being our first target. I always find it very hard. I think part of the discipline of running an exploration campaign is to rank your targets, and I think that's very important to do. Having said that, I think it's actually very nuanced as to what sequence you rank them in. I think there are no shortcuts in exploration. You have to systematically work through all those targets, because really the difference in probability between rank number 1 and rank number 42. Of course, you want to kind of tackle the ones that are, glow the brightest, kind of on the heat maps. But really, we have a dozen targets that look better than Havron just from the geophysics. Now, some of them may well end up being of interest, but equally, none of them may be. I think it's always hard to sequence these things. So I think people should, we might be lucky, but think about these as multi-year campaigns. But that's good, because we have that option value sitting there for some time to come.
Okay. So are there any other assets you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, this is, I think, really gold and nickel, with some copper prospectivity as well. Where we haven't drilled this historically, and I think that's something I'd really like us to do. We've got a program this year where we're trying to get some geologists up there to walk the ground and identify drill targets for us. There are some people next door that have some interesting expressions at surface, which make us kind of a little bit more excited about certain parts of Panorama as well. So we like this ground, and I think you will see us try to walk it forward over the next 12 months.
And is that the whole portfolio, or have we got other things still that
No, so there's another 3 Brommus and the 2 Tasmanian assets. And Panorama, I actually, for what it's worth, I actually probably think the nickel may be particularly prospective, although we have, some, gold. We have found some kind of alluvial gold up there in the past, which is positive. Brommus is going down to the south end of Western Australia. Interesting discovery just to the north with Galileo recently, their Galileo mining. So we think this is, it's multi-metallic, gold, zinc, lead, copper. But again, I think the gold is but I think the nickel. So this one's probably more gold and nickel, but I think the nickel again is. I think there's some opportunity for nickel sulfides there, so which are kind of the prize to find. So that's something that we continue to kind of focus on. Again, we want to get boots on the ground in this financial year budget to June and try to develop drill targets there.
And Tasmania, a bit of an outlier by the sounds of things. So what's going on there?
Tasmania is interesting for us. Like, to some extent, Fire Tower is a somewhat more advanced than some of those other projects. There has been intercepts. There is identified gold there. But to put that in context, where we've got about a 6.5 million ounce gold equivalent resource at Havron, it looks like, say ballpark 50,000 ounces so far identified at Fire Tower. So and that's not to say there's not more, but I don't think it has the scale to sit next to a Havron type project. Warrantina, which is probably just more gold focused, whilst Fire Tower is more polymetallic. That's actually, there's some historic gold workings there. It's you can talk about Tasmania being an extension of the Victorian gold fields that have been prolific, but we don't necessarily see these assets sitting in the portfolio. We have had some chats around other companies, taking an interest in them and running the exploration. We'd like to, as Greatland, retain an interest and exposure to Fire Tower and Warrantina. We've had them in the portfolio for the reason we like them. They're a little bit overshadowed now by their big brother up in the Patterson, but that doesn't mean they don't have prospectivity, and I just think maybe someone else can do better justice to them. So that's something that we continue to think and talk about finding the right partner. We would be open to do that, because what we think is best, if we can find someone who will accelerate activity there, rather than us just keeping them kind of on ice for an extended period of time.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, they seem to be outliers in terms of your geographical region, and also, yes, maybe the prospects are not as large scale, but that doesn't say you just dump them. To have somebody who is already exploring in those areas would make sense. So
and look, with the consolidation of the team really into one office, in Western Australia and Perth, getting boots on the ground is just a bit more expensive and time consuming to get across there to Tasmania. So again, is there a more focused explorer that can show these more love and affection?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I see that as a very comprehensive roundup, and people should not just be looking at Greatland Gold as a one-horse story, because it most definitely is not. And I can see, obviously, from purchases that you've made even last year, that that is also the intention, that there is an ability to exponentially grow this company by more and more exploration. So that's an interesting chat, and good to see that the Western Australian government wants to support that as well. So all looking very positive.
Yeah, I think the investing in the drill bit and undertaking this exploration is one of our three growth pillars. And I think when you look at that, there is no better way to create shareholder value than through exploration success. It is absolutely the cheapest way to add ounces to the portfolio. So it is worth undertaking. I think we have some tremendous ground. We have really good option value that if we can unlock that, I think some patience is needed, but the option value there in the Patterson, particularly at Ernest Giles, equally so. And then also with Panorama and Bromwich, I like them probably, Panorama, I think, continues to maybe look increasingly interesting to us as well. So I like what we have there in the portfolio. We want to understand them better. And, I think if we can create that event where we bring a second development into the portfolio, I think that just has a huge impact on shareholder value.
Well, Shaun, we look forward to you updating the market in the form of assays and quarterlies, etc. And thanks very much for your time again. Pleasure as always.
Yeah, guys, I really appreciate your time again, and I enjoyed the chat, and hopefully that's helpful. And we'll have an exploration update out next week. So appreciate the time, Phil and Kevin, and for those who've taken the time to tune in.
All the best. Thank you very much, Shaun.
Thank you, gentlemen.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.